Watching GVTV News.
Thanks, Gloria, and I'm Randy Hansen. In World News headlines today. Clinton meets with military junta in Burma. And Suu Kyi backs U.S. engagement with junta regime in Burma. And 18 killed in Iraq violence. Iraq Prime Minister open to U.S. trainers. And no U.S. apology for deadly Pakistan attack. And Britain cuts Iran ties. And the EU molds new sanctions, and central banks unveil new lending rules. An indigenous activist protest Shell in Durban. And Israel releases $100 million in seized Palestinian funds. And UK workers conclude massive general strike. And 350 arrested in Occupy raids. And Bloomberg says NYPD is my own army. And whistleblower, Canadian police could have arrested serial killer of women 3 years earlier. But before these stories, GVTV News would like to thank one of our underwriters who supports your only visual video news media in Nevada County. That's right, it's us, GVTV News. In today's first world news story, U.S. Secretary of State Hillary Clinton is in the midst of a landmark trip to Burma, the most high-level U.S. official to visit there in 50 years. Earlier yesterday, Clinton began talks with the Burmese junta. Clinton said the Obama administration will not lift sanctions immediately, but would be prepared to do so in the future if democratic reform is enacted. Ahead of the U.S. Secretary of State Hillary Clinton's talks with the junta, the Burmese pro-democracy leader Aung San Suu Kyi gave a rare video address from her home in Burma. Suu Kyi said she would support the lifting of sanctions if a series of conditions were met. And she said the United States has made it quite clear what they expect the government of Burma to do if sanctions are to be lifted, and we certainly support this. At least 18 people were killed in separate attacks in the Iraqi province of Diyala earlier yesterday. The violence comes amidst Vice President Joe Biden's visit to Iraq ahead of a deadline for U.S. withdrawal at the end of the month. After a meeting with top Iraqi officials, Biden said the withdrawal will proceed on schedule. New York Times is reporting President Obama has ruled out an apology for the recent NATO airstrikes that killed 24 Pakistani soldiers. Officials within the State Department, as well as the U.S. ambassador to Pakistan, had argued condolences were needed in order to restore relations between the two governments. Pakistan has responded to the attacks by blocking all NATO logistical supplies that cross the border into Afghanistan. On Wednesday, Pakistan officials said they've given the United States until December 11th to vacate a strategic airbase used to launch drone strikes in Pakistan's Restif tribal region. Britain is cutting off diplomatic ties with Iran in the aftermath of the storming of the British embassy in Tehran by protesters earlier this week. Britain has now withdrawn all its staff from Tehran, while also ordering the closure of the Iran embassy in London and the expulsion of its diplomats. 6 of the world's major central banks, including the Federal Reserve and the European Central Bank, have reached an agreement to help reduce the loaning and borrowing costs of foreign banks. The move will reduce by half the cost of an existing mechanism wherein foreign banks borrow from their own central banks after dollars are purchased from the Fed. In news from Durban, activists with Canadians' Indigenous Environmental Network staged a protest on Wednesday outside of the local office of the oil giant Royal Dutch Shell. Ben Paulus said, "We are here in protest of Shell's involvement in Canada in the tar sands in northern Alberta and their violations of human rights in Indigenous communities." Israel has agreed to release about $100 million in Palestinian tax and custom payments it had withheld to punish the Palestinian Authority for seeking membership at the United Nations. The PA had warned the move was illegal and would push it towards financial collapse following similar Israeli moves in the past. And British public sector workers have wrapped up a 24-hour general strike that marked the largest in generations. Around 2 million teachers, hospital staff, garbage collectors, firefighters, and border guards hit the streets on Wednesday in a strike organized by a coalition of 30 trade unions. Total number of arrested in the raids on occupied encampments in Los Angeles and Philadelphia earlier Wednesday morning have now topped 350 people. Nearly 300 were arrested when around 1,400 officers raided the Occupy LA site and City Hall. At City Hall, 50 people were arrested when Philadelphia police cleared the protest camp in Dilworth Plaza. To date, more than 5,000 people have been arrested in Occupy Wall Street crackdowns nationwide. And New York City Mayor Michael Bloomberg boasted to an audience at MIT Tuesday night that the New York City Police Department is his own personal army. And he said, "I have my own army in the NYPD, which is the 7th biggest army in the world." The mayor has been accused of using New York City's massive police department as his own private force to clear out Occupy Wall Street protesters from their home base in Lower Manhattan and execute scores of arrests throughout the city. And in Canada, new details have emerged about the alleged police negligence in the case of the British Columbia serial killer who murdered scores of women. Catherine Gilliford, an officer with the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, says police could have nabbed the killer, Robert Picton, more than 3 years before he was eventually arrested. According to Gilliford, police had enough evidence to search Picton's farm in 1999 but took no action. Police had already compiled a file on Picton that included his prior arrest for stabbing a sex trade worker multiple times on his property. Despite being a potential suspect in the disappearance of a number of women who turned out to be his victims, surveillance on Picton was halted after just 2 weeks because his trailer was located too far from the road to be visible. No further action was taken. Picton went on to kill 14 women during the intervening period until his 2002 arrest, which itself resulted from the unrelated firearms case. Remains of 33 women were ultimately found on Picton's farm. Claimed to have killed 49 women, Gilliford has also accused the officers investigating the woman's disappearance of sexually harassing her, as well as neglecting the case by watching pornography on the job and leaving work early to go drinking. She is slated to testify at a public inquiry into the police handling of the murders in January. And that's it for World News Today. Now another thanks to one of our underwriters who supports your only visual video news media in Nevada County. That's right, it's us, GVTV News.
Soundcheck Music Center, the rock and roll connection. We have guitars, amps, drum equipment, sound accessories, lessons, and repairs. We are located at 671 Maltman Drive, Grass Valley. 530-272-7236, open 7 days a week.
There's something happening here, but what it is ain't exactly clear. There's a man with a gun over there, telling me I got to beware.
That's right, it's time for the police blotter, and pictures in the blotter not from these actual events, but used for visual aid only. Grass Valley Police Department on Tuesday, 9:06 a.m. A caller from 1100 block of East Main Street reported a vehicle had been broken into, the ignition tampered with, and the interior vandalized. At 9:26 a.m., a woman from 100 block of Catherine Lane reported a man told her he was breaking into her storage unit. It was unfounded. At 12:56 p.m., a caller from 100 block of West McKnight Way reported a driver with a child in their lap. At 1:26 p.m., a caller from 100 block of Woodcrest Way reported a Western Union scam. No money was lost. At 2:02 p.m., a woman from 300 block of Pleasant Street reported her neighbor was banging on her door. At 6:43 p.m., the other woman reported she tried to apologize and the first woman wielded a baseball bat at her. 2:16 p.m., caller from 100 block of West McKnight Way reported an employee took property. Embezzlement charges were to be filed. At 2:31 p.m., a caller from 100 block of Margaret Lane reported a man possibly passed out and a woman yelling and screaming. They were moving on. 4 p.m., a man from Plaza Drive reported a man punched him in the face. 2 men were cited on suspicion of battery. 4:09 p.m., a caller from 700 block of Freeman Lane reported the theft of a Honda Civic from a parking lot. A be on the lookout advisory was issued. And at 4:30 p.m., a woman from 1400 block of Sedgeworth Way reported a man kicked in a door, then fled. At 6:29 p.m., a caller from 100 block of Neal Street reported a man looking in vehicles who could not be located. 8:17 p.m., a caller from 500 block of Seton Way reported a man being harassed by 2 men and a woman. No crime was found to have occurred. The Nevada County Sheriff's Office on Tuesday, 9:15 a.m., a caller from Sugarloaf Road reported 2 juveniles vandalized a horse pasture. At 10:27 a.m., a caller from 10,000 block of Kate Vincent Court reported a heavily tattooed man came to the door and asked for money. 11:42 a.m., a caller from Slate Creek Road and Morgan Ranch Drive reported a drug issue. At 12:09 p.m., a woman from 16,000 block of Dry Creek Lane reported her dog was bitten by a passerby's dog. Or was it a cat? At 12:43 p.m., a caller from Oak Ridge Drive reported a man just cut his hand with a chainsaw. 2:17 p.m., a caller from 11,000 block of Alpine Lane reported a physical fight. It was mutual and no charges were desired. At 2:52 p.m., a juvenile was cited on suspicion of possession of marijuana. What a surprise. At 4:17 p.m., a caller from Broken Oak Court reported a man beating a woman in a parking lot. Neither wanted criminal charges. 5:20 p.m., a caller from 13,000 block of Desperado Drive reported the theft of a pole saw. What do you expect on Desperado Drive? 9:02 p.m., a caller from 10,000 block of Brookside Way reported wrongful death that occurred in January, and Nevada City Police Department on Tuesday. 3:03 p.m., a caller from Lindley Avenue reported a missing juvenile who was found while the caller was on the phone. And Wednesday, 6:35 a.m., a caller from 300 block of Broad Street reported finding the back door of a shop open. And that's it today for the blotter. Now, another thanks to one of our underwriters who supports your only visual video news media in Nevada County. That's right, it's us, GVTV News. In today's local news headlines, maced suspect arrested. And parole hearing continued for convicted murderer. And jury needs less than 2 hours to convict felon on weapons charges. In our first local story, written by Liz Keller of the Union, Grass Valley man who was maced by his alleged victim remains in county jail on multiple charges, including spousal abuse. Jacob Michael Siegfried, 34, reportedly had a restraining order against him in connection with a September arrest. He faced charges of deprivation of custody, stalking, criminal threats, making harassing phone calls, and intimidating a witness in that case. The female victim, who was not identified, told Nevada County Sheriff's deputies she was trying to make child custody exchange with him on Sunday and agreed to meet him on Coyote Street just before 8 p.m. She went to get her son, and Siegfried grabbed her by the hair and tried to pull her into his vehicle, said Sheriff Keith Royal. She was able to wrest free, and a physical fight ensued. Siegfried pulled her hair and she fell on the ground, then tried to spray him with mace. She also got herself and her child, Royal added. Passerby saw her lying on the ground with Siegfried hovering over her. The victim yelled for the passerby to stop, and Siegfried fled. Deputies learned Siegfried was at his mother's house, but he allegedly fled when they got there at about 11 a.m. on Tuesday. Deputies eventually found him hiding in the bushes after a quarter-mile foot pursuit. Siegfried was arrested on suspicion of spousal abuse, resisting arrest, violating a restraining order, and committing a felony while on bail. He had been arrested September 5th after a Penn Valley woman reported he was refusing to bring back her child after a court-ordered visit. Siegfried allegedly told the woman he would take the 3-year-old boy to San Diego or Mexico and threatened to kill the woman and their son if she contacted law enforcement. He is scheduled to be in court on the earlier charges, 1 p.m. December 8th. A parole hearing for convicted murderer David Gates, scheduled for Tuesday, was continued for a year as he was mentally unable to attend or assist his attorney, according to Nevada County Deputy District Attorney Oliver Pong. Gates was convicted of second-degree murder in a strangulation slaying of his father on March 23, 1993. On that day, police responded to Gates' residence and saw the victim's body lying on the porch, being administered CPR by emergency medical personnel. Robert Gates, 71, initially was thought to have died of a heart attack at a Nevada City bed and breakfast inn. David Gates told police his father said he felt tired about noon and collapsed. The son then placed him on a bed because he thought his father just wanted to sleep, according to the then Nevada City Police Chief, Mel McDougal. But results from an autopsy showed Robert Gates had been strangled. David Gates had recently been released from a mental hospital before the incident. Earlier that year, federal officials in Utah arrested him for impersonating a U.S. attorney in an attempt to gain control of a motel in Wendover, Utah. He was found mentally incompetent to stand trial and was confined to a mental ward in the U.S. Medical Center for Federal Prisoners in Springfield, Missouri. In January 1993, doctors determined Gates did not present a danger to other people and released him. From Springfield, Gates traveled across the country until he ended up in Nevada City in mid-March. David Gates initially was found mentally incompetent in the murder of his father, but he was hospitalized and eventually deemed competent. He pleaded no contest to second-degree murder and was sentenced to 15 years to life in prison. Pong attended the parole hearing on Tuesday along with 4 family members. The family members gave their victim impact statements to the parole board hearing board, summarizing how the tragic murder impacted their lives and their concern for their safety. Pong gave a short summary for the record, requesting the future parole hearing board to consider the decompensating mental state that shows David Gates may never recover, and the threat to family and society as he has become unpredictable in his delusions. In our last story by Liz Keller of the Union, a jury of 9 women and 3 men took less than 2 hours to find a convicted felon guilty of possession of a deadly weapon, a meat cleaver, as well as possession of a firearm and ammunition. In the end, it all came down to which version the jury believed. the Nevada County Sheriff Deputy Jeff Martin, or that of the man he tried to pull over on a routine traffic stop, Ronald James Hauser. Martin testified that Hauser was driving down Indian Springs Road, 11:45 p.m., January 28, 2010, driving under the speed limit and drifting over the fog line twice. He told the jury Hauser initially refused to exit his car, then scuffled with Martin, even after being pepper sprayed. It wasn't until a backup deputy arrived and threatened to shoot him with a taser that Hauser complied and was arrested. Martin testified that he found a 24-inch long chain in Hauser's vest, about 24 live .22 rounds of ammunition. He said he found a large meat cleaver between the driver's seat and the center console and a loaded .22 revolver under the seat. In court Wednesday, Hauser testified he bought the gun for protection. He said he made a complaint regarding the alleged molestation of his young daughter less than 2 weeks prior, and then was the victim of a drive-by shooting in Marysville the night before his arrest. Somebody popped a couple caps on me, he said, adding that he ran to check on his family before driving around the block to look for his assailants. He told the jury he bought the gun off the street in Yuba City, then bought ammunition from a friend in Grass Valley. He insisted, however, that the gun was not loaded and that the gun, ammunition, and cleaver were in the trunk of the car. He also said he had bought the cleaver to give to his mother for kitchen use, then had forgotten about it. Hauser said that Martin pulled in behind him on the night of his arrest, driving really fast, and did not have his flashing lights on. He also said that after he told Martin he was going to record the incident on his cell phone, the deputy rushed him. The video camera mounted on the dash of Martin's patrol vehicle reportedly was not working and did not record the confrontation. Juan Carlos Medina, Hauser's stepfather, testified he was at the house on the night of the alleged drive-by and said Hauser came in shouting that he had been shot at. Hauser's attorney, Bill Walker, told the jury his client's story was believable. Walker admitted Hauser was convicted felon and did have possession of a gun and ammunition, but argued he had legal necessity for the gun because of his stated need for protection. He's not got anything to hide, Walker said, suggesting the deputy's dash cam video malfunctioned for some magic reason. The prosecution wants you to take their word for it. Why, he asked. Why not believe the defendant? But Deputy District Attorney Jim Phillips told the jury he didn't find Hauser's explanations persuasive, and neither should they. You don't have to check your common sense at the door, Phillips said. If you find this ludicrous, trust your judgment. The jury returned to the courtroom once to ask several questions about the meat cleaver, then reached a verdict soon thereafter. Superior Court Judge Candace Heidelberger will rule this on whether this is sufficient evidence to add enhancements for the Hauser's prior felonies, which could increase his potential sentence to 25 years to life. Hauser was remanded into custody after kissing his distraught fiancée, Sherry Bringman, goodbye. I'm extremely not happy, Bringman said of the verdict. They moved the evidence. They set him up. He's a good man. He doesn't deserve to go down like this. And that's our last story today in our local news. GVTV News would like to thank Associated Press, Reuters, Amy Goodman, the Union, and others for the sourcing of our news, and you for watching. Don't forget, we are broadcast 3 times a day on Public Access TV, NCTV, Comcast Cable Channel 11, and Suddenlink Channel 16 in Truckee and Alta Sierra, 8 a.m., 3 p.m., and 7:30 p.m., Monday through Friday. Random other times, check the website for the schedule. We're streamed daily, NevadaCountyTV.org, and video on demand there. We're also on our websites, GVTV.org and GrassValleyTelevision.com, and RuralCountiesTelevisionNetwork.ning.com. We also post to Facebook, YouTube, Blip.tv, and a free video podcast on iTunes. You can get us on smartphones, PSP, and many handheld devices, and we have RSS feed. And now we're going to thank another underwriter, and have a good weekend, and we will be talking to you again on Monday. Christopher's Old World Deli and Catering Company has brought its delicious food and service downtown Grass Valley. Do you like desserts? They got 'em. You like international style lunches? They got 'em. Christopher's Deli and Catering for parties, get-togethers, weddings, or whatever. Open 7 days a week. Bellstar Shop is a one-of-a-kind place you will find on the Ridge. Steaming hot coffee and a cool atmosphere with healthy food, organic desserts, and meals available. Belle and her smile will not be forgotten the first time you visit.